Signore e signori, buonasera. Welcome to this special screening of Maka, directed by Elia Moutamid and written by Simone Brioni. We have the fortune to have both the director and the author of the script with us. I'm not summarizing the film, obviously. Actually, whenever we have a movie, we do not talk much about it before, because we rather see the movie and then talk about it. I just want to ask Simone and Elia to come to the stage with me, so that at least you'll see them before, and then I hope that you will all stay for the discussion after. Here is Simone Brioni, Vieni, and Elia. So, it's a film about a woman, a remarkable, extraordinary woman. When I saw the trailer that they sent me, it was sold when an old lady with whom she's speaking tells her, Mateul, referring to her husband, meaning, you can have him. And I thought it was such a strike of genius, and you will see that Maka is really larger than life, and it's a great movie dedicated to her. I'm going to tell you something more to introduce our guest when we start our Q&A. Do you have anything you want to say to the audience before they see the movie?
Buonasera, enjoy the movie.
Buona visione. Thank you for being here.
Very good. So we start rolling the movie, and then we're going to be back with Simone and Elia. Thank you. Enjoy it. Grazie. I was not going to stop the applause for the film. And thank you so much for having made this film and also for bringing it to us. And you're doing a very intense tour, especially of colleges and universities. How many have you visited already?
20, I think.
20.
Yes.
So let's see if our audience has special questions that sort of...
Here in USA, we just begin, so we are at, I think it's the 5th today.
Yeah.
5th or 6th.
So in the New York area?
Yeah. And then we're gonna bring it to Colorado, etc. So 20 in total after this tour, basically, after this fall tour.
So tonight we have the fortune of having the two authors of these documentaries. There is the director, Elia, and the captions say, author. You wrote this story. How can you, and then I'm going to tell you something more about them, but I'm very curious about how do you write such a thing with a larger-than-life presence like Maka, that doesn't seem somebody that reads from a script, and the great part is also Elia telling his own story at the beginning, right? How does it work? How do you write something like that?
Well, I think when you write a documentary, the most important thing is to listen and to, I spent a lot of time studying Elia's films. I wrote also an article about Italiana, and I spent almost 6 years getting to know Maka, learning about her story, and the writing of the documentary went hand in hand with the making of the new, with the editing of the new edition of her book, with the translation of the book, with the editing of the English translation.
So you edited the English translation?
Yes,
of
which
Maka's
was
book.
translated by Giovanna Bellese and Vittoria Offredi Poletto. And so, so it was really, the writing went hand in hand with a series of other works, and also, it was already conceived as a translingual project, because already we tried to translate in Italian certain reflections which were developed in the United States, and vice versa, to bring to the US, back to the US, certain reflections, discussions about race and racism which were generated, which emerged in the Italian context.
Thank you. Simone Brioni is also a professor in the Department of English at SUNY Stony Brook and Film Studies too. And so he is an Italian who emigrated to the United States. So the condition of this dual condition of coming from somewhere else, of being different, is something that also you experience. And same thing to a different degree for Elia, who went to Italy, came because I always think that I'm there, went to Italy as an infant, as a baby, from Morocco, where his family is from, and he grew up there. Did you notice something in their accents when they speak? Can you tell where they're from? Però non vale, questo è di Brescia, chi l'ha detto? Ecco, vedi?
Oh, my
So
country.
even when they speak English, you recognize that they're from Brescia, right?
Impossible not to.
Lei di Cremona.
Ah, okay. Okay. Enemies. No. No. I'm joking.
Another big accent.
Okay.
So how did your condition of migrant or child of immigrants influence your way of approaching the story of Maka? The story of Maka is absolutely unique. She's larger than life, and she's an absolute character. But, it's a story of constantly changing and being something different from what they perceive you to be. How did your own personal stories influence the making of this film? Puoi cominciare?
Okay. When we thought, when I thought about making this film, I started with the idea that it was impossible to make a film about Maka, a person who actually reflected upon what it means to be seen by a white site, to be constantly under observation by a white majority, without thinking about what it meant to actually make that film. Of course, I could have never even think about this film if I didn't live outside. So I constantly see myself from a kind of a double gaze. I see myself here, but also I go back to Italy often, and I look back at this country from a different perspective. And I looked at the work of several directors before choosing to work with Elia, I was, but I really wanted to work with Elia precisely because in his work there is exactly the same gaze, of him looking at Italy, looking specifically at the place where we are both from, so from Brescia, but from this kind of double vision, from a person who knows Brescia, who speaks Bresciano, but also has another belonging.
Elia, per te.
Okay. The documentary that you have seen is.
Do we call it the documentary, first of all?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
We consider it a documentary, but in a universal way, I consider it a movie, cinema.
Okay.
So telling a story using the picture language. So me and Simone and also Geneviéve Makaping, Maka, we consider this work, this project, as a collective project, collective product. So each of us put his knowledge, his job, his experience, and also his identity. So there is many things that you could read in Maka that I've across in my previous movies, my previous works, and those elements I think make Simone in the condition to choose me, because he recognized something that could work for his narration, for his reflection. And here there is two white men. We consider us white men, but we can speak a lot about this, that are took the responsibility to speak about a woman, first of all, a black woman, second, and a very special, particular, charismatic woman. We are talking about the first video journalist, black video journalist in Italy. Something strange, something special, and something that till now didn't repeat. And this is another point of view that we have to consider, talking about Italian society and then.
It's very important what you're saying, that it's not something that it was repeated. So
Yes.
there was her, and then there was nothing.
Yes, exactly.
And I remember a few years ago, a journalist for NPR, National Public Radio, the most prestigious radio station, came to interview me about La Grande Bellezza, the movie by Paolo Sorrentino. And I was so impressed. This very young guy, just out of college, went to Stanford, from Afghanistan. So he came with his family when he was a young man, and he was working for NPR, the best radio station in the US. And I was wondering, when is that going to happen in Italy? That a journalist for a major RAI program or Berlusconi program is going to go out and interview people regarding Italian culture. So when I saw the story of Maka, I thought, well, maybe it's happening. It happened, but it happened only that time. What does she have to do about? What does she has to say about that?
I think that she considers herself as a, we say in Italian, mosca bianca. So
a white fly.
A sort of, yes, and but she have a great hope to see another example of Maka, to see in the young generation a changement, and this is a hope that we have both, that we have. Many people have the same hope. So, but now Italy is under a big social changement, because the first time we have a huge quantity of sons of immigrants that they are trying to change something, So let's see in the next years what could happen. So my personal experience was a son of immigrants that arrives in Italy in the earlier 80s. Mm-hmm. So me and my family, we were considered as a curiosity, as something new. So I never compared myself with the experience of the young new Italians now. So we are talking about two very different Italies. So now, for the first time, we have youngs that have 17, 18 years old, that born in Italy, grow up in Italy, they consider themselves Italian, but are not Italian legally, because there is no ius soli till now in Italy. This is another huge and complex argument. And I think that my hope is it's those young people.
Elia, in your own experience, how much in your experience? Yes. How much did it count on the way in which you were considered by other Italians? The fact that you look Italian. I mean, you could be from, I don't know, Reggio Calabria, or maybe Roma, or
Southern.
whatever. Yeah, Southern Italy, but Italian nonetheless. How much does that influence the perception of yourself as an Italian, as a true Italian, quote unquote? And how much was that?
Yes, this is a good question, but needs many time to
think about
to give.
We'll talk about
it. Okay.
Yeah.
Yes. We just before the screening, I had an interview with the young girls, and they asked me the same questions about.
They're smart.
Yes,
they're our students, right?
Okay. About what I consider talking about the perception. Yes, till my 20th anno di vita,
20th year of life.
I consider myself as a Bresciano, first of all, and then an Italian, and then a Moroccan or Arabic. Something changed in 9/11, and Italians discover what the Arab are in North Italy. So it was a discovery also for me, and the perception of me changed.
Your own perception.
Yes, my own perception. Yes, and it begins a sort of auto-analysis,
self-analysis,
self-analysis history, and my job, cinema, helps me a lot to make this self-analysis, because my cinema, Maka, of course, but also my previous films, I use myself as a cavia, as a lab rat. So
as a guinea pig. Like
yes,
cavia.
a guinea pig. Yes, guinea
non
pig.
È carino.
No, non è carino. But yes, but I use myself, my own story, in order to make it as much universal, in order to put the spectator in the position to recognize themselves in some dynamics, because thinking, as Maka said, when we talk about us, we talk also about the others. And this is an important quotation that Maka said to us. Yes.
Simone, tell us something, since you are the official critic of Elia. Tell us something about his previous films. What are they about? And just briefly, so people have a sense of his cinematographic production. You wrote about him.
Yeah, so Elia's first movie came out in 2017, and it's the story. It's based on the real story of his father who wanted to go back to Morocco. So he takes this very strange truck called the Boat of the Desert, and they drive back to Morocco, and somehow this movement from Italy to Morocco, back to Morocco, is also a way to kind of think, like back of the 40 years in which his father stayed in Italy. So that's the first movie, and it's kind of interesting, the reversal of the trip, no? So migration is no longer to Italy, but it's going back to Morocco, which of course has very symbolic value. And the second film he did was in 2020, Kufid. It is another strange documentary. It is about the first lockdown in Italy, but it is also weirdly a movie about architecture. So going back to normal. So one of the slogans of the first Italian lockdown is a way to think about what is normal. Who is us? Who are we as a community? No, let's be together. No, there were all these slogans during COVID. No, so it's a way to think who are we? And I think I really admire that film, the ways in which Elia was able to bring together such different stories. I think it's a kind of a movie that if a director would go to a producer and say, "Well, I want to make this film," it would never get any kind of support, and he did it all by himself. No, it was, it was at home, and he edited, he acted, he directed the film.
And we want to remind that the province of Brescia was one of the most hardly hit by COVID, especially in the first wave. I don't want to monopolize the discussion, even if I have other 10,000 questions for you, and I think it's time to open to our audience. If you have any questions, raise your hand, wait for the microphone to be brought to you, and you can take this one. And we'll do our best to take as many as possible. Thank you. Yes, here. Mr. Viscusi, yes.
You mentioned that you have shown this film at some universities. What has been the reaction, and why are they interested in this movie?
Mm-hmm. In universities in Italy and in the US, right? Maybe also the difference of the...
Well, I'm more interested in the reaction of American audiences to the film.
Mm-hmm. Well, thinking in terms of audiences was very important for us to present. Of course, we knew that we wanted to present this film in universities. We also wanted to show it in movie theaters. So we wanted to go beyond academia. That was one of the efforts of my, I think there are important reflections being made in academia, so we wanted to go beyond that. Generally speaking, there was a very, the film was welcomed with, really well. People were really interested in this kind of foreign experience of Italy. Usually in the US, there is pretty much a stereotypical idea of Italy, and it's kind of interesting to see. Not only another, a part of Italy that is probably, not, it's pretty much Roman-centric. Most movies about Italy are all about Rome, but also about new identities, and also perhaps another way to talk about, race and racism, I guess, because, Maka has very original reflection. She comes from Africa. Definitely in the US, there is pretty much a US-centric discourse, and I think... So, yeah, and I think something that we're very proud of is the fact that the film is always kind of a foreign experience for audiences. It was presented in Italy at the African Film Festival in Milan, And here it will be presented at the Charleston Italian Film Festival. So, it's always, we don't have, we cannot locate this movie geographically, so so I found it very interesting, that there are these...
The languages that are used in the movie have more than one, and therefore it adds further layers to it.
Yeah, definitely that was something that we, was... since the very beginning, we knew that we wanted to make a language, a movie that actually wanted to make the audiences feel, to experience how it feels, not to perhaps understand all of the languages that are there. No, languages can, of course, create communities, but it can also exclude from, a community. And so we wanted to use a dialect, we wanted to use Arabic, there is French, there is English, etc., which somehow reflects our everyday experience. I speak at least 2 languages in my everyday life. Elia does the same, and Maka too. So we wanted to kind of reflect that. Yeah. Yeah.
Other questions? Maybe shy audience. Yes. Yeah.
First of all, thank you so much for this film. There's so many really powerful moments, but one that really sticks with me is the press conference. Could a white woman have gotten away with her questions and had it answered by the president? What were some of the objections?
The press conference with Berlusconi, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Okay, we've used in this documentary also an important quantity of archivement material, archival material, and this particular scene helps us to underline also the Maka's job. So Maka was also a journalist, a very strong and very smart journalist, and in front a man, a charismatic man as Berlusconi, un uomo carismatico ma impenetrabile al contempo. So please translate it.
Yeah, very charismatic, but also very, difficult and powerful man, to relate to. So, yeah,
okay,
to read.
In the same time. So Maka found, because found quickly the strategy to go. Okay, saying how beautiful you are. So
He starts melting.
okay,
He melts.
okay, and directly with asking the question. So I found personally that 2 minutes something very powerful in order to talk about Maka as a journalist, and yes, the archival helps us also to use it as a time machine and go in the past and have a dialogue in the past, but in the present in the same time.
The question was whether a white journalist woman could have gotten away with the same question. Right?
Yes.
I think if she had, maybe that's my interpretation, if she had started by saying, "You're very beautiful, Mr. President," she might have. But Berlusconi was first and foremost a narciso, or a narcissist. So start praising his beauty, and it's fine. Then you can ask whatever you want. He's not going to answer like he didn't answer her question.
No.
The central question was about these women enslaved by prostitution, and he doesn't touch on that. The whole the Rubacuori was not exploded yet when this interview went on. And it was another emblematic case of a foreign black woman sort of abused Moroccan woman.
Yes.
Moroccan, yeah.
Professor Merjan?
I was just going to say
The microphone.
Okay. This could be completely wrong, but I read that scene as her, in a sense, holding up a mirror to, I mean, particularly with regard to what she was talking about with the Nigerian woman doing her hair, that that the experience of black women in Italy is so much that of objectification, right, and sexualization. And I interpreted her turning that around on Berlusconi as that the first thing that she addresses is his objective beauty, which of course has the simultaneous effect of charming him and yes, exactly. So I don't, that was just how I kind of interpreted it, in addition to the, making him kind of sciogliere, which was very kind of funny and obvious. But I don't know if that was something that you also kind of read into that, was that it was, a reversal of that kind of alterity. I don't know. Yeah, I know Eugenio.
No, that's definitely a great comment, but I think, the more I watch this movie, because of course when we were making the film, we weren't also kind of interpreting or perhaps thinking about all the layers that, then you can see after watching it many times. But, definitely the idea of beauty is something that is, pretty much there in several scenes of the film. Even the reflections about the Renaissance, for example, which somehow created ideas of beauty and, what is beautiful and what is not, created perhaps certain aesthetic hierarchies on which then racial hierarchies are also based. Perhaps that's something that we should perhaps consider. No, we couldn't shoot this film in Mantua without, thinking back about a certain representation of blackness, which of course testify to the presence of of Africans in Mantua during the Renaissance, but at the same time, there is definitely, they occupy a very specific role, no? And Mantegna was really proud about the somehow the standardized figure of the servant of Judith in the classical Judith and Holofernes representation, that he somehow portrayed as black, somehow fixing her with that skin color. Yeah.
I found that part particularly brilliant when you enter into the camera disposi and the characters become animated and they have their own thing to say after centuries. That was brilliantly done.
Yes.
Professor Albertini.
Yes, thank you both. This was the second time I saw the movie, and I have to say that I got emotional the first time, and it happened again because it's really powerful, and I really think that you did a fantastic job. I mean, she's great, right? I mean, she's really a fantastic character, but the way in which you build the narrative, both as screenwriter and director, I think is particularly effective. And one thing which really got me thinking this time is the point about identity, because this is such a sort of fraught question, and we all address it in our classrooms. We talk a lot about it. There's so much discourse going on about identity, and I'm not particularly happy with the ways in which the discussion of identity is dealt with, even within academia. And then, listening to the final parts of the film, I thought, well, this is the way in which I like this notion to be addressed, because, she really shows how relational, in the end, this notion of identity is. And she sort of comes up to this, with this sort of idea at the end of a journey which you have built in the film. And so we have seen her going through all these various identities while being a very sort of strong individual. So in a way, she has a very strong identity which comes super well sort of up through the film, and yet she sort of advocates for a very fluid notion of identity, which includes the color of the skin, the geographical provenance, the languages spoken. And I find this particular way of dealing with this topic extremely satisfying, both at the level of the aesthetics of the movie, but also at the intellectual level of the discussion, which is ongoing about identity. So it's really a comment and a praise, but if you do have thoughts about this particular question on how you kind of got to think about it, I'd love to hear more.
Mm-hmm. Definitely, there was a programmatic idea of kind of thinking about this film as a project of a team, as a collaborative project, as a multi-voiced project. Something that struck us, perhaps in the presentations, was that so there was definitely this idea of somehow, putting of creating this kind of choral narrative, etc. That for sure. But something that struck us and goes back to the idea of perhaps identity and the importance of representation was that there was a Cameroonian family that followed us basically in several different screenings around Italy. So it is true that there is this choral narrative, this collaborative project, actually the collaboration and the process of making this film, which is really the protagonist, somehow together with Maka, of course, but but there is also the idea of somehow in Maka's stories reverberate several other stories. So Mercy Abbas considered her as a mother. She actually, she was really. Other people, other Africans who actually watched the film kind of saw themselves in this story. So I think it is interesting how it is a choral film, but it is interesting also how it was received by Africans when we presented it in Italy.
Thank you. We have a question back there.
Hi. So in a lot of the scenes of the film, she's shown wearing like traditional Cameroonian clothes, especially when she's giving, I don't know what it's called, but when she is receiving the citizenship. Was that an intentional choice to show her in these clothes, or is that just how she dresses day to day?
Could you make any decision about her clothes, first of all?
Okay.
I don't think that was negotiable with her.
Lo facciamo. Rispondi tu?
Un po' delicata.
Ma è uguale.
questa cosa, capisco.
No, era pianificata, adesso non mi ricordo neanche se era nel primo sceneggiato questa cosa.
Yeah.
O meno. Okay.
Yeah. So she decided to, when she received the Italian citizenship, she wanted to have, a traditional Cameroonian clothes on to show her multiple belongings. And she actually wanted us to show all the different Cameroonian clothes in the film. Of course, it's always very problematic to use traditional clothes because you risk the risk is to essentialize identity. I think about I don't even know what kind of traditional clothes I would use, probably a Neapolitan, because it's much more, if I were the object of this kind of ethnographic documentary gaze, I would not probably use some traditional Bresciano symbol because it would not be legible. Exactly, it would be lost. But yeah, it was very important for her, and I think we wanted to show the multiple facets of her identity, and one of that is that connection with her traditions, and so she also insisted to use those clothes. We discussed about it, and so then we decided to use them. But I found it very interesting that in particular the last clothes, it's interesting because we are talking about the Renaissance, so that kind of Italian identity somehow a foundational moment for to define Italianness. And then she also looks like a Renaissance figure with these clothes. And there was a very interesting visual element and reverberation there. So we decided to use it.
We have time for one more question, yes. We'll just wait for the microphone just 1 second. Thank you.
Thank you, and good evening. I have an observation, and it's almost centered on what I think is the spine of the documentary. At the very end of the movie, or close to the end, there was a comment made that with every person you meet, every person with whom you interact, a portion or piece of that person is left with you. And I felt, that, translating that thought, that I've met Maka in a different way, a different element. And if that's true, the comment, then she'll be with me forever, at least for a long, long time. So, thank you.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
I think we couldn't have expected to finish our Q&A with a more beautiful comment. And please tell Maka.
Yes, we will.
And thank her also on our behalf for what she's done, for what she represents still today. And I hope to get you back with your next project. Thank you very much, and thanks to all of you for being
Thank
here
you
with
so
us.
much. Thank you. Thank you, Stefano.